How are you guys doing? Today is Tuesday, December 29th, 2020, out here in this quarantine. And for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to go through the Week 17 playoff picture. I'm going to go through the playoff picture one more time, as there's only 1 week that'll decide which teams will play in the first ever extended NFL playoffs. That'll feature 7 teams for both conferences. And I'm very excited to really jump into this. And just to start off with it, I'm going to look into the AFC just to show you where the AFC picture currently stands. At the very top, the only spot that has been secured in the playoff picture is the number 1 spot in the AFC, which belongs to the Kansas City Chiefs. After their win against the Atlanta Falcons, the Kansas City Chiefs are now 14-1. They have officially won their division. And because they are 2 games better than the Bills and the Steelers with 1 game left, they have secured the first round bye, the only first round bye in the AFC. And especially coming off of a season where they won the championship, I think that the Chiefs are most definitely a team that should be feared going into the playoffs. And they're the only team that doesn't have to worry about their lineup going into Week 17, as their playoff seeding will not be changed depending on if they win or lose this game. But looking forward to their game this week, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to face off against the Los Angeles Chargers, who have no playoff aspirations. So this could be a very interesting game or very boring, depending on how you see this game. Because I can see that I just see the Chiefs benching a lot of their best players for this next game because there's no point in actually starting all your best players. Jumping to the second seed in the AFC, that currently belongs to the Buffalo Bills following their win against the New England Patriots last night. With this win, they have won the AFC East as they are now out of reach of second place Miami. And with this, of course, they have already clinched their division. And with this win, they own the tiebreaker over the Steelers because they beat the Steelers in Week 14. So with this, they are currently sitting in the second spot in the AFC. And their next game is going to be against the Miami Dolphins, who are competing for a playoff spot in the AFC East. And considering the Bills have already clinched a spot, I can see them sitting a lot of their players, as the Miami Dolphins are definitely going to try their hardest into this game. If the playoffs were to start today, if all the teams were to be situated as they are now, the Bills would be slated to play against the Cleveland Browns first round. So that'd be very interesting. But as of right now, the Buffalo Bills hold on to that second spot, and with a win against the Miami Dolphins, they could hold on to it. The third spot in the AFC belongs to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who a few weeks ago were sitting in the number 1 spot as they won their first 11 games of the season, and it looked as though they weren't going to get beat, but they eventually did. They lost 3 times, and they saw themselves drop 2 spots, but they were still able to beat the Indianapolis Colts to get their 12th win of the season. And with that 12th win of the season, they've, of course, won their division, as the Baltimore Ravens are currently out of reach. And because the Buffalo Bills own the tiebreaker, the Steelers are now sitting in third. If the playoffs were to start today, the Pittsburgh Steelers would be slated to play against the Baltimore Ravens. But this week, they're going to Cleveland to play against the Browns. And, of course, the Browns have a playoff spot to fight for. So it's going to be a very interesting outing for the Steelers. But regardless, win or lose, the Pittsburgh Steelers have already clinched the division, and they have definitely clinched they have clinched a home game for the first round of playoffs this year. And then right now, the fourth spot in the AFC is currently up for grabs, as the Tennessee Titans are currently sitting with the AFC South lead with a 10-5 record following their loss to the Green Bay Packers. A win could have seen them possibly take over the division, but it didn't. But because they own the tiebreaker over the Indianapolis Colts, they are sitting with that 4th spot pretty comfortably, and they have to win their very next game in order to secure that playoff spot. And this game is going to be against the Houston Texans. The Texans are 4-11. They could be playoff spoilers for the Tennessee Titans. I mean, because the Tennessee Titans, it's still very possible that with a loss here, they could see themselves fall out of the playoff picture, but that's not very likely. With their next game being against the Houston Texans, all the destiny is in the Titans' hands to make the next round. And if the playoffs were to start today, with everything sitting as is, they would be slated to play against the Miami Dolphins, who are the number 5th seed. Speaking of the Dolphins, like I said, they're sitting in the 5th seed following their win against the Las Vegas Raiders this week. They are now 10-5 as they are second in the AFC East. They are unable to catch up to the Buffalo Bills. But considering, because they are now sitting at 10-5 along with the Baltimore Ravens, the Cleveland Browns, and the Indianapolis Colts. But for some reason, they own the tiebreaker. So, of course, if the Miami Dolphins were to win their next game, and this game would be against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, they would hold on to their spot and they would clinch that 5th spot in the AFC as of right now, as it stands. And if the playoffs were to start today, they'd be slated to play against the Tennessee Titans. And the 6th spot in the AFC, if everything went as is, the Baltimore Ravens would squeeze in with the 6th spot. They're currently sitting second in the AFC North as they are unable to officially catch Pittsburgh, as Pittsburgh was able to get the win as they secured the division following their big matchup against the New York Giants. A win for the Baltimore Ravens in Cincinnati could see them clinch a playoff spot because there's no way they can fall out, especially considering that they're in right now. If they were to win, they would do more than enough to clinch the next spot. And if the playoffs were to start today, the Ravens would play against the Pittsburgh Steelers as it's set up. And the last spot currently in the AFC that's up for grabs is the number 7 spot. And right now, that spot belongs to the Cleveland Browns. After their loss to the New York Jets, they still sit 10-5. They have the 3rd best record in the AFC North as they trailed the Baltimore Ravens due to a tiebreaker. And they currently own the tiebreaker over the Indianapolis Colts. So a win for the Cleveland Browns in their next home game against the Pittsburgh Steelers could see them hold on to that 7th spot and could see the Cleveland Browns possibly move into the playoffs, where in the first round they'd be slated to play against the Buffalo Bills if everything holds as is. And the only other team in the AFC that's competing for a playoff spot are the Indianapolis Colts. Following their loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're now 10-5 with the 2nd best record in the AFC South, as the Tennessee Titans currently own the tiebreaker over them, and both teams actually lost this week. So the Titans luckily held on to their tiebreaker, but the Indianapolis Colts this week are currently slated to play against the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. So for them, a win could possibly see them make the playoffs. In addition to that, a loss from either the Titans, the Dolphins, the Ravens, or the Browns could see the Indianapolis Colts make it. And considering they're playing against the Jaguars, it looks as though they're going to have to wait for one of these other teams to lose. Those are the only 8 teams that are competing for the 7 spots in the AFC. As like I said, the Titans, the Dolphins, the Ravens, and the Browns and the Colts are all sitting at 10-5 as the AFC is literally going to come down to the last week to see how it'll all take shape. Jumping to the NFC, the team currently sitting at the very top are the Green Bay Packers at 12-3. They are 1 game ahead of the Saints and the Seahawks. So, of course, a win in their final game against the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte could solidify the New Orleans Saints running away with a playoff bye, which could be the Packers are going to be slated to play against the Chicago Bears in Chicago at 4:25, and a win against Chicago could see Green Bay run away with the top spot. And with that'll be very big for them, and they would have to wait for after the wild card round to get started, as they would get an extra week of rest. Right now, the 2nd spot in the NFC is currently sits with the New Orleans Saints, who are 11-4. They have clinched the NFC South as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are unable to catch up to the Saints, even if they tied up with the same record. But with the New Orleans Saints, they are going to face off against the Carolina Panthers. And the way it's situated, it looks as though if the Packers were to lose and the Saints were to win, the Saints would take over their spot. And a win against the Panthers could see the Saints finish above the Seahawks, which would be very big for them. And if the playoffs were to start today, the Saints would be slated to play against the Chicago Bears as it stands. The 3rd spot in the NFC currently belongs to the Seattle Seahawks, who, just like the New Orleans Saints, are sitting at 11-4 and have already clinched their division following their win against the Rams. As it sits, their final game is going to be against the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco. So a loss from the Saints could see the Seattle Seahawks jump right up into that 2nd spot. There's no way that they could fall out from the 3rd spot. So worst case scenario, they finish that 3rd spot because the Washington football team is not even close to catching them. But a win could prove very big for Seattle. And of course, they're going to try their very hardest to win this game coming up. And right now, if the playoffs were to start today, they'd be slated to play against their division rivals, the Los Angeles Rams. Sitting in the 4th spot in the NFC, you have the Washington football team, who are currently 6-9, following their matchup against the Carolina Panthers. And going into this last game, the Washington football team they have the same record as the Dallas Cowboys, and they are one game above the New York Giants. But considering they own the tiebreaker and their next game is against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia on Sunday night on NBC, a win for Washington would secure the division for them. And with this win, they could go on to the next round where, if the playoffs were to permit them, if everything stays as is, they would be slated to play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the very first round. And speaking of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they currently sit with the 5th spot as they sit 10-5 in the NFC. They're one game behind the Saints, and it's unlikely that they're going to catch them. But they have officially clinched the playoffs, especially following their big win against the Detroit Lions. A win here could see them secure the top spot in the wild card for themselves, as this week the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to face off against the Atlanta Falcons at home. So a win against Atlanta could be very, very big for Tampa Bay. And if everything were to hold still, they would be slated to play against the Washington football team in Washington. The 6th seed in the NFC currently belongs to the Los Angeles Rams, who are sitting with a 9-6 record. They are second in the NFC West as they are 1 game or 2 games behind the Seattle Seahawks following their most recent loss. But with this loss, they're still a game behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they are 1 game ahead of the Chicago Bears. A win this week for the Los Angeles Rams could secure a playoff spot for them, and it's going to be against the Arizona Cardinals, so it's going to be a very big game, a very, very big matchup, considering the Cardinals are outside of the bubble trying to get in. If the playoffs were to start today, the Rams would be playing against the Seattle Seahawks, so that'd be pretty big. And the 7th spot in the NFC, as of right now, it belongs to the Chicago Bears, sitting at 8-7. They're second in the NFC North to the Green Bay Packers. They're 1 game behind the Los Angeles Rams, so it's very possible that they could overtake the Rams. And they have the same record as the Arizona Cardinals, but own the tiebreaker. So as of right now, the Chicago Bears look to be the team. And if they win their next game, if the Chicago Bears were to win their next game against the Green Bay Packers at home at 425, the Bears would secure their playoff spot and a ticket for them to go into the next round, where if the playoffs were to stand as they are, they would be slated to play against the New Orleans Saints. And then looking outside of the 7 teams that are already sitting in those spots in the NFC, the first team on the outside looking in are the Arizona Cardinals, who are sitting at 8-7. They are 3rd in the NFC West. They currently trail the Seattle Seahawks by 3 games, and they trail the Los Angeles Rams by 1 game. They have the same record as the Bears, so a loss for the Bears could see the Arizona Cardinals make it in the wild card. That's the only way they make it in is through the wild card. It's going to be very interesting, especially following their matchup to the Niners. And in their last game, they're going to play against the Los Angeles Rams. And a win here could very possibly see them jump into the playoff picture. In addition to the Cardinals, the other 2 teams in the NFC that are still competing are the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. The Dallas Cowboys are 6-9. They are second in the NFC East as they have the same record as the Washington football team. A win for the Cowboys and a loss for Washington can see Dallas eventually making it into the playoffs. So that'd be very big for them. And looking at how the Cowboys are faring, this game is going to be against the New York Giants. So, of course, it comes down between the Cowboys and the Giants are 1 game behind the Cowboys. A win for the Giants, and it looks as though a loss for Washington could see the Giants take over that playoff spot. So this last week most definitely matters for them. It most definitely matters for the Cowboys because the Cowboys have to beat the Giants, and then the Washington football team this week, they will have to face off against a very tough opponent. And this week is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's the NFC East is going to come all the way down to the very, very end. And it's going to be very interesting. But with that said, that's what the playoff picture is looking like going into Week 17. Once again, it is Tuesday, December 29th, 2020 out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims. I want to thank everyone for tuning into this 14-minute piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you tomorrow following NBA basketball. And I'm going to catch you later today following my list of the elite basketball players in the world. With that said, I hope all is well, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Peace.